Hello and welcome back to Wine Form, and it feels really good to be back. It is so good to be back after a much needed hiatus. Honestly, I am refreshed, renewed, and reinvigorated and ready to bring some even more interesting, hopefully you guys find it as interesting as I do, but even more interesting wine content to the wine bar. Sometimes it's good to just take a step back, take stock of where you've been and where you want to go from there. So, make a roadmap on how to get there. That's what I was doing. Hilariously enough, I think the timing of me choosing to do this was kind of beautiful. I didn't plan it this way, but I received this week my signed copy of John Green's latest book, The Anthropocene Reviewed. So first of all, just look at that cover. That's the graphic designer in me thoroughly appreciates the interpretive nature of this. This is something that I look at on a bookshelf and it really stands out. And I appreciate the lines that you've got just taking you places, which I think is kind of neat and really symbolic. And on the inside, there's all the dots that John Green drew when he was learning about or just focusing on Hiroyuki Doi's circle drawings, which is super cool, and there is an essay about those in here. And the best part, it's his signature! So exciting! So he actually did 250,000 signed pages to go into the first release of his new book. And when I tell you that, the dedication, that was really impressive. It was so beautiful. When I tell you that I squealed when this arrived, I am not kidding. I really did squeal. And I think I hugged the book and then I ran to go sit in the sunshine and start reading it, because that feels like the sunshine just felt like the proper place to read a book like this. So the fact that I received this copy, which is kind of like him, which the way he described it, it's like him actually coming forward with his experiences rather than sort of hiding them behind fiction that he's written in the past. He's really, he took stock of where he's been, where he's going, where he wants to go, and where humanity's been, where it's going, and where it would be so cool if it was to go. That makes sense. So the fact that this came out, arrived at my doorstep the very week that I was feeling the same way about myself in this channel is just... Okay, so disclaimer, I have started reading it, but I have not finished, and I will tell you why. So, I was sitting down and I was enjoying the first few essays when I suddenly stopped and I thought, what am I gonna pair with this? And at that point I knew I could go no further until I had figured out which wine I think would pair very nicely with this book. So one of my many guilty pleasures is actually sitting down with a glass of wine and a good book and just letting myself kind of escape the world for a bit and just zoning in to the very world that is within those pages. And many of the books that I gravitate towards are designed for escapism, which I appreciate. I think those really do have a place. However, there's something kind of magnificent about The Anthropocene Reviewed, and it's that it is the very opposite of escapism, if that makes sense. It really invites, his essays, his writing sort of invites you in to take a closer look at some of the things that he's paid attention to, the fact that he's paid attention to, and really examine them, not as a disinterested observer, but as a participant, as his wife Sarah Green so beautifully put it, and I am paraphrasing. So something that really struck me about his book is that it is a collection of essays. It is a collection of seemingly disjointed ideas that he has brought together to draw conclusions and form reviews about various aspects of human life. The Anthropocene, which I think is quite beautiful. I really do think that his essay on Diet Dr. Pepper sort of says it better than I could, in the sense that Dr. Pepper has million, I don't even know how many, like 74, I think, 74 different flavors that make up this one very artificial, unrecognizable flavor that we seem to really appreciate, that has created something greater than the sum of its parts. His writing feels the same way. And in that sense, I knew that when I was going to pair a wine with his writing, I needed a blend. I do think that it is really important to appreciate wines unblended and appreciate them by themselves, really get to know each varietal for what it is and what it can be. But once you understand those things, it becomes even more exciting to appreciate them when they're put together. So yes, I knew, number one, that wine had to be a blend. Based on the beautiful colors and that sort of contrast, that aurora borealis looking theme that he's got going on this cover, I knew that I wanted it to be a red wine. Something about introspection, which this entire book is all about, introspection on what is beyond ourselves. I knew that I wanted to pick a wine which would go really well with an introspective idea, something that you could sip on and you could savor, kind of like you mull in your own thoughts, if you will. And in that sense, I knew it had to be a red. So we've got a blend, we've got a red. And I wanted something that was just a little bit rough. Because wow, I think the beautiful thing about the Anthropocene, which I think he seems to really communicate, and if I am misinterpreting, I apologize. This is my take so far. The Anthropocene is messy. It is so unpredictable. It is so beautiful in its imperfection that I think if it was streamlined, if it felt very cohesive, and if it felt polished, it wouldn't feel the same. So I wanted a wine that reflected that. And in that sense, I knew that I maybe wasn't going to find sort of a rough wine in the sense of the wine itself. I wanted something that was smooth drinking, because when you are enjoying something, you don't want to be taken out of what you are enjoying by a jarring flavor. But I did want something from a winery that had the same sort of rough, human-centered idea. So given all those criteria, it had to be a blend, it had to be red, and it had to be rough, but it had to be smooth drinking. I decided to pair the Anthropocene Reviewed with Chronic Cellars Purple Paradise Red Blend from Paso Robles. So first of all, we've got the rough cut, wood cut sort of aesthetic here. It looks very humanistic. It definitely has a human touch. The motif of the skull, bringing in that literal Anthropocene just right there. And the fact that this is a red blend. This red blend is Zinfandel, Petite Sirah, Syrah, and Grenache. And I think that those wines, while individually are amazing, put together, they really are greater than the sum of their parts. Kind of like his essays. The Zinfandel and the Petite Sirah really bring that heavy heatiness to the wine with those blackberry and licorice and jammy sort of flavors and that very heavy body, especially that Petite Sirah. So it's grounded. It feels like it has a presence. And then you get the finesse and the sort of beauty, the human touch, that thread of thought which sort of weaves these ideas together in the Syrah and the Grenache, with the Syrah with the lighter, sort of jammier qualities, and the Grenache with the very light-bodied red fruit, maybe bubblegum kind of characteristics. So together, I think they really are truly beautiful. This wine is the way to go when you're reading this book. John Green, if you happen to see this, I just want to say, there are very few, there's a handful of known writers per generation that can just write with such compelling honesty and such unique thought that it just draws you in and you want to know more. I learn something new every time I read your work, and I think that it's just beautiful. I would put you up there with Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Jane Austen, like all my favorite classic writers with a unique voice and an amazing perspective and a gift for narrative and an honesty a compelling honesty that you only find a few in a generation. John, you, for me, you are one of those writers, and so thank you for putting out what you have. Thank you for helping me look at the world not as a disinterested observer, but as a participant, and perhaps a more willing participant. So thank you. If you haven't done so already, then be sure to subscribe. I am back. I will be back. Thank you for being so patient with me during this hiatus, but I'm here. At this point, I'm going to be releasing maybe some very different stuff and maybe some familiar stuff. So if you are up for a game of Russian roulette, metaphorically, when it comes to wine videos, be sure to stick around. If you enjoyed what I put out, maybe you have a copy of the Anthropocene Reviewed and you want to read it with a glass of wine, please have it with a glass of Purple Paradise by Chronic Cellars. I look forward to it myself. So if anyone else wants to try it, please do. Oh yeah, drop in the comments. What is your favorite piece of contemporary literature? I know there's a lot of classic literature out there that we can all gravitate towards and really appreciate, but contemporary literature is a little bit more difficult to appreciate, in my opinion, because it hasn't been out there as long. It's a bit more of a discovery if you pick it up and you decide to enjoy it. So yes, what is your favorite contemporary literature? And it can be anything: essays, poetry, plays, sonnets. Sonnets count as poetry. It can be whatever you want, but if it's contemporary, let me know. So I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. But until then, happy reading, happy sipping.